All right. So this part of the lecture is going to be the part two, part A. So the ending of the part A. We're a little bit behind in terms of the speed, so I'll be cranking out some vids so I can give them to you because we just can't cover enough content in the time that's given for a lecture. So I'll be doing these lectures and I'll be also just doing solo lectures because I can't be asking you to attend all of them. So be keeping an eye out for other things like that. For example, yesterday I uploaded your part one of part A, right? So today we're going to do this one and we're going to do another one. And then later tonight, I might do another vid and post it for you so you guys have that. Also, I wanted to mention those that are interested in the LVN, RN fields, you have to take this exam called the TEAS exam, TEAS. And I have been, some students have contacted me regarding this, and it's been for semesters now. And the passing, you need to get a 70 to get into the RN program. That's just one of the requirements for this exam. I have not taken it, but I have been studying through I have multiple resources for it and I've been looking it over. And for quite some time now, it's already been a year now, students have been saying, hey, you need to have been asking me to do a tutoring like organization on the side for them to help them succeed through the TEAS. Now the TEAS has different portions. Of course, I would be only focused on the science portion of it. Now the science portion, if I remember correctly, has more weight to the overall average of the TEAS. So I'll have to show this information to you, but from the way I understand it, it doesn't work like, ooh, if you didn't pass the reading part, you don't get in. It's an overall average, right? But the science has more weight to it, which makes sense. Now, I think the reasons why students struggle with the TEAS exam is because you have some genetics in it, not a lot. You have biology and basic chemistry. Well, biology is not a prerequisite for this class. 1308 non-science major biology or even the science majors biology is not a prereq for this class. That's a downfall for most of you. Unless you're fresh out of high school and you had an awesome instructor or you did self-independent studying and you're just really good in biology, then that's great. Most of you have not taken chemistry or the first part of chem, so that's not going to aid, not going to help you at all. Most of the students that I know come back with just like 68, 69, 70, 71s, and 72s. I've never met anyone with an 80 since I've been here at Salvo Technical College. Nobody. And I keep asking students every time they take it how they're doing. And I love that they're honest with me. They tell me their scores. So I'm thinking about doing this. I will get back to you and provide you some more information, but I was thinking we could do it like I will get my own personal Zoom account. I won't be dealing with any SWTJC since this will be something I'm doing on the side. And I have looked online for TEAS programs. They charge up to 1,300 for 4 days, 5 days. You go to San Antonio UT Health Science Center and they host it there, or the University of Galveston, look it up. They charge for like a week, 5 days, 8 to 9. I don't see that as a benefit. Like for me, it wouldn't work. Maybe for some of you, it will, but I wouldn't recommend it because that's not the best way to learn. So my plan was of doing kind of like a twice a week thing for a longer duration and help in hopes that you guys would have a better learning experience versus jamming everything down in 5 days and expecting you to somehow magically pass your TEAS exam with a great score. Now, it's getting tougher to get into these programs because more people have figured out that it is a good career to choose, considering the financial investment that you put in academically and the financial returns. It's pretty good, unlike other majors that I will not state, right? So there are a lot of majors in colleges and universities that the financial return, like what the job will pay if you get a job in the major you get, nobody talks about those things, do they? Nobody sits down and says, "Ooh, well, that's great that you picked this major, but here are the possibilities of jobs. Here's the percentage. Here's the median average income of what you're going to get from this job." I mean, nobody either cares or doesn't want to spend the time to tell you that. But if you are planning on going to an LV and RN program, I'm here to tell you that, yeah, the return's pretty good. Or anything, you want to go to physical therapy, anything human health related. And it's only going to get more. I'll show you the data. We're going to have more and more job availabilities because we have an aging group of individuals, like that baby boomer group. And they're really going to need, that's a lot of people who are going to need a lot of help. And then you have pandemics like COVID. That's a very interesting one, right? I mean, the jobs are there. I mean, if you're willing to take the risk, if you're willing to put yourself there and you follow the protocols, right? We need good healthcare providers in the front line. And we have pneumonia, we have flu, like we have to take care of people. So the jobs are there. Um, so I'll send out an email to you explaining this a little bit in more detail. And we'll touch base on it again. I don't want to spend too much time discussing this TEAS thing, but I'll touch base with this later, okay? So just wanted to briefly mention it. Now let's see, let me do a shared screen and let's start off with our part 2. So I'm calling it part 2 of part A because that's the way it is in your textbook. That is what your PowerPoint calls it, except I put of part A so we know exactly where we are. We're in the A PowerPoint. So that is why I'm calling it part 2, because that's the way your book calls it. Okay, so the topic here is called transmission lines, nerves, and their structure and repair. So I guess the first thing I should do as common practice is say, can you see this PowerPoint before we begin? Great, thank you. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so we're gonna discuss stuff on nerves and associated ganglia. So we've discussed ganglia, not a lot in nerves. We're going to get into it now. Ganglia, yes. Nerves, not so much. So what does this nerve mean? Cord-like organ of the peripheral nervous system. So it's going to be very important to have these nerves because that's where we're going to be gathering a lot of information from. So a nerve could be the myelinated or non-myelinated peripheral axons enclosed by our connective tissues. So we have 2 of these types of nerves, and the way we classify them depends on where they originate. In other words, where do they come from? So we have cranial nerves coming from the cranial area, spinal nerves from spinal area. Okay. So remember that we talked about myelinated and non-myelinated peripheral axons enclosed by connective tissue. Well, we're going to take a look at these different types of connective tissues. So endoneurium, a loose connective tissue that encloses axons and their myelin sheaths. Now remember this word, these Schwann cells are the same thing as myelin sheaths. This is the part that we covered in chapter 11. Perineurium. The perineurium, coarse connective tissue that bundle fibers into fascicles. The epineurium, these are tough, fibrous sheath around all fascicles to form the nerve. So once we get into this picture, you're going to have a better idea of what we're talking about. Here's an actual picture of a nerve. Endo inside. Epi, I want to start this way. Epi, like epidermis, epineuron, outside. This region here, fascicle. In the middle, blood vessel. These here are nerve fibers. This here is the perineurium, endoneurium. So if we look at a cartoon image like this, it even helps us better understand it, because has this somewhat three-dimensional look versus this one's a cross section. So we have the nerve, we have the epineurium outside, farthest most outside, and we have here the blood vesicles, and this whole thing here, fascicle. What is the connective tissue around this fascicle? Perineurium. What about inside this fascicle? We have endoneurium. And then if we peel this away, we're going to see the myelin sheath, or AKA also known as the Schwann cells, right? And inside that is your axon, all right? So now we're still in structure, because I'm talking about some structure and classification, so we're still there. Now, most nerve fibers are mixes of afferent and efferent fibers, and somatic and autonomic, or visceral fibers. So the way we're going to be classifying these is based in the direction that they transmit impulses. So for example, a mixed nerve is going to send impulses traveling both to and from the CNS. Mixed nerve. Impulses that travel to, let's say, brain and spinal cord, or from brain and spinal cord. Okay. Sensory nerves, these afferent nerves. These send impulses only towards CNS, so only towards brain and spinal cord. Motor nerves, these are the nerves that are sending impulses away from brain and spinal cord. Now, we can look at the different types of fibers in the mixed nerves. So I kind of bolded here so you can see the most important part. So somatic, afferent, these are sensory from muscle to brain. So now we're getting a little more specific. Here we're just broadly talking. We're just broadly talking here. We're saying, okay, sensory, muscles, sensory, afferent nerves, impulses towards CNS. But now we're looking at a little bit more specific, saying, oh, okay, this is a sensory, but a somatic afferent, sensory from muscle to brain. Notice how this one's another sensory, and it also goes to the brain, but it's visceral, which is like organs. Look at this definition here. Visceral organs, internal organs, which are soft internal organs of the body, including lungs, the heart, and the organs of the digestive, excretory, reproductive, and circulatory. So visceral, meaning inside, afferent, look at this, afferent, somatic afferent, visceral afferent, somatic afferent, muscle to brain, visceral afferent, organs to brain. So what is the common denominator here? Afferent. All right. Now, let us look at efferent. The common denominator here and this one. Now it is from, sorry, I forgot my little parentheses there, but now motor from brain, visceral efferent, motor from brain. In this case, it is the reverse of this. Efferent, brain to muscle. Visceral efferent, we're still talking about organs, right? But this time from brain to organs. So they're the opposites. You have to have a two-way street. So these are one-way streets. Each of these are one way, and then it has to come back. Let's say you travel to the grocery store, and you're going to take a somatic afferent. You're going to go from muscle to brain route. Well, you have to come back home. At some point, you're going to have to go somatic efferent, back home from brain to muscle. So that is the concept that I'm trying to instill here, is practice those terms, write them, make sure you understand where these impulses are traveling to. Do we have questions you'd like to talk about at this point? Okay, so let us go back again. That's where we're at. These transmission lines, right? Just like telephone lines that are transmitting information. We're going to try to figure this out. We're going to talk about these telephone lines, the nerves, the structures. Are they able to repair? We come in here, we talk again about a nerve. We define it. We say that they're myelinated, they're non-myelinated. We can say that they can originate from cranial or spine. We talk about different types of the connective tissues. Then we give you a structure that is of the nerve, and we peel back these connective tissue layers to give you an example of where they're originating, what they do. Then we talk about mixed nerves and the impulses associated with them, meaning that mixed nerves, the impulses can travel to and from CNS, sensory, impulses towards CNS, motor, and the key word is afferent, away from CNS. And we just ended this discussion here. So let's go and let's talk about ganglia. Ganglia. So they contain neuron cell bodies associated with nerves in the PNS. And we're talking about nerves, but these are saying they contain neuron cell bodies, right? So the ganglia associate with afferent nerve fibers containing cell bodies of sensory neurons, like a dorsal root ganglia, autonomic ganglia. So let's discuss regeneration. So this one here is just kind of ganglia. It's focused more on this definition. What is a ganglia? What is that? We're going to talk about regeneration. So mature neurons are amitotic. What does that mean? Well, relating to or denoting the division of a cell nucleus into two parts by construction without the involvement of a mitotic apparatus. But if a soma cell body of a damaged nerve is intact, the peripheral axon may generate in PNS. Major emphasis on the may. It could, it may not occur, right? So it can go either way. However, this does not occur in the central nervous system in terms of the repair, okay? So if you have to choose between, hey, where does the repair not occur? Central nervous system. Where is it likely to have nerve repair? Peripheral nervous system. So even though this chapter is highly focused on the peripheral nervous system, we have to briefly introduce CNS. Because remember, the goal of the peripheral nervous system is going to be sending impulses, communications, action potentials, sending this stuff to the central nervous system, and then it has to go through the three phases, right, of integration. So CNS axons, most CNS fibers never regenerate. Never regenerate. Now let's talk about PNS. And the reason I kept it short is because it is kind of short. They just never regenerate. We could say a lot more about it, but I'm just going to pause it there. Make sure that we know CNS fibers never regenerate. Now we can talk a little bit more about PNS, since we know the PNS, peripheral nervous system axons, and nerves have some regenerative abilities. So they can regenerate if damage is not too severe, right? So an axon fragments and myelin sheath distal to injuries degenerate. So this degeneration can spread down the axon. There are also, we mentioned when we talked about all of these different cells in chapter 11, macrophages. These macrophages can clean dead axon debris. Schwann cells are stimulated to divide. So that means if they're going to divide, they're going to protect it with that myelin sheath. Axon filaments grow toward regeneration tube. The axon regenerates and new myelin sheaths form. Now, of course, there's a lot of different factors that take place in regeneration of the PNS. So it can regenerate, and in some situations, it cannot regenerate. Now, I'm not going to ask you to go through this process of the regeneration of the peripheral nervous system. I think I give you enough information. I have to kind of pull back a little bit of some stuff. And this is one I'm going to do. This is one of them that I'm not going to be asking you to give me the specific details. For example, everything in the phases of 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting stuff. Great. Awesome stuff. Read it in your own time. You like, dabble in it. But not going to be requiring that. But you do need to know in terms of CNS, very unlikely. I'm sorry, never going to regenerate. It's just really not going to happen. And then PNS, we have some hope. We have hope, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. So that is the end of this part. So I'm going to stop share. And do you have any questions? We will start the next one. And the reason I do this gaps, again, remember the gaps between, it was scheduled from 5 to 6. I do the gaps because I do not like having a next Zoom meeting going while I am getting information from this presentation, saving it on my computer. It doesn't work too well. So I asked for the hour so I can take care of business and load up the videos. That's why I really need that hour to do that. So if you have any questions before, hopefully see some of you come back for the 6 to 7 lecture. You have questions on your exam?
I just have one question. I know last class meeting you had mentioned reviewing about the final for the exam, and you had said that we can look up the clinical questions, but where are they located in the book, or is that on my mastering?
We'll show you right here. Let me close. Oh no, I can't do that. Let me do that. Cannot minimize when you're recording. All right, I'm gonna have to stop recording.